Hello, and welcome to Aberon's Armorial. Today we're looking at part 3 of the evolution of the Royal Arms, and that is the evolution of the arms of the Kingdom of Great Britain and of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Now, as we left off, there was, of course, a change in the governance, and that was during the reign of Queen Anne, and that was the Acts of Union, which formally recognized the the Kingdom of Great Britain, which was a merger of both the Kingdom of Scotland and the Kingdom of England together into one new kingdom. So at this point, the styles and the arms changed to reflect that. Now, Anne would only live for another 7 years after this happened, and while she did, this was the arms. It joined the arms of Scotland and England together, as you can see in the first and fourth quarters, but at this time they were still claiming the crown of France and, of course, dominion over Ireland. So the arms would not change. However, shortly before Anne's death, without any children, she had appointed that her successor would be Sophia of Hanover. However, Sophia of Hanover died 2 weeks before Anne did. And so when Queen Anne passed away, her crown passed on to who would become George the Third or George the First, who was Sophia of Hanover's son. And that would begin the House of Hanover. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about the arms of the House of Hanover because they will be featured in the Royal Arms from here on out until the 1800s. And as you can see, there are some common elements here. The white horse on the red field is mainly attributed to Hanover and is still used today in Hanover. The crown of Charlemagne is shown in a escutcheon in the center. On the upper left-hand side, you see two lions. And then on the right-hand side, you see the arms of the ruling house of what is now Denmark. Now, I do not know that much about the marshalling going on here. However, this is the arms of the House of Hanover. Well, at the time, the Elector of Hanover. It will become the Kingdom of Hanover at a later time. So, once George ascended the throne, he began using a style of arms similar to Anne's. The first quarter still remained that marshaled English and Scottish arms. The second quarter remained that of France. The third, that of Ireland. And then the fourth became the arms of Hanover. And as you can see, everything pretty much stayed the same besides the adopting of that extra quarter. However, in 1801, a new thing happened. That was the creation of the United Kingdom, which further expanded on those earlier acts of union, and it became the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, which sounds more like what we know today. Now, this happened during George III's reign, so from 1801 to 1816, the arms on the left were used. Now, around 1816 is when George III famously started slipping into madness, and the only difference to the arms that was reflected upon that was because during his madness in 1816, he was declared King of Hanover. Hanover had become a kingdom, no longer an electorate. So on the arms, you can see above the escutcheon, which was placed the House of Hanover. That was the other change of the arms that happened in the time of the United Kingdom, which was that the arms basically become what we know them today. Four quarters, the first and fourth being the Lions of England, the second of Scotland, the third of Ireland. However, in 1816, they started using a new crown of Hanover instead of the cap of the elector. So that would have lasted through George III's reign from 1816 to 1820. And then, of course, that would continue to be used during the reigns of George IV, his son, who had served many years as regent, and, of course, William IV, the predecessor to Victoria. Now, the arms here, this is the last time you'll see the iteration of it. After this, they pretty much stabilize into what we know. That is because when Queen Victoria ascended the throne in 1837, she was disqualified from being King of Hanover. Hanover had a male-only succession rule, so her uncle became King of Hanover, and he used another variant of the royal arms, which I will do in another video. And from then on, the arms borne by Victoria become the arms borne by every king up to George VI. So, of course, these arms would then be worn by not only Victoria, but her son, King Edward VII, his son, King George V, his eldest son, Edward VIII, who would famously abdicate, and then George VI. Now, these arms were used throughout their reigns. And then, of course, when Queen Elizabeth ascended to the throne, there was a change shown to reflect the independence of Ireland, well, the Republic of Ireland. So the traditional Irish harp, showing the bare-breasted woman, became just a simple harp. And depending on where you're at, you might see the older form of harp. Neither is really incorrect. However, this is the style that is mainly used in the time of Elizabeth, so this is what we kind of like to divide as heralds. So, since 1952, the arms on the left-hand side are the version that Her Majesty the Queen uses while in England, and on the right are the variant as used in Scotland. Now, I can break down and discuss some of these elements because we have historic precedents if you have seen the last two videos. And if you haven't, maybe you should go back and watch those. Now, the first things first is the four quarters. Now, the four quarters on the English variant of the arms are, of course, the first and fourth quarter being the arms of England, which are gules, 3 lions, passant, gardant, or the second being the arms of the King of Scots, which is, of course, or a lion rampant, gules, armed and laying to zero, all within a double treasure flurry counter flurry of the last. And then the third quarter being a zero, a harp, or. Now, in Scotland, the variant changes so that the quarters of Scotland take precedence over the quarters of England, and you can see that reflected. The lion and the unicorn remain the supporters of both countries. However, in the English variant, the lion is crowned and the Scotland is gorged with a chain. And in the Scottish variant, both are crowned. However, the crown of Scotland is used on the unicorn, and the crown of England used on the lion of England. The crests are both similar. You have the crown of England, or the crown of Saint Edward, and you have a lion on top of that who is also crowned. There's lots of crowns in this image. The arms are, of course, surrounded by the strap and buckle of the Order of the Garter, bearing its motto, and then they're placed upon a compartment showing one of the badges of the United Kingdom, which is, of course, the thistle, the Tudor rose, and the Irish shamrock together. Then the motto at the bottom, Deo et Mandrat. And then over on the Scottish arms, the crest is, of course, a lion cruchant on top of the Scottish crown, bearing a sword and a scepter, who is also crowned. The only difference is the Scottish motto is actually shown above the crest, and then the motto of Scotland shown below, Nemo meum pun lecet. And then, of course, they are, instead of using a garter, the chain of the Order of the chain of the Order of the Thistle, sorry, I cannot talk today, is shown around the arms here, and the compartment is shown with thistles. Now, there are some other versions of this arms that you may have seen. The left-hand side, which is very reminiscent of the English arms, is the arms used by the government. It is just a simplified version of the arms, and the same thing is done in Scotland. You know, they only use the crown, they use the chain of the Order of the Thistle instead of the garter, etc. So that is how we came to the modern version of the royal arms. If you have any questions, please remember to comment, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I hope you have a great rest of your night wherever you are.